What I'm about to tell you still scares the living shit out of me. I beg you, please don't fall into the trap that I did. If you come across a phone app called SimWorld, do not install it. I've always enjoyed playing Sims games, making characters, building and decorating houses, leaving my annoying Sims in swimming pools, and removing the ladder or shutting them inside a room with no door. That sort of thing has always amused me. So when I came across a new sim game that I haven't heard of before, I immediately installed it. It was fairly quick to install, so I figured it wasn't a very complex game, which is fine because I just wanted something to pass the time on my phone. I opened the app and immediately a message appeared saying, SimWorld wants to access your photos, contacts, and location. Block or allow. I really hated these types of things, but it wasn't like I had anything interesting on my phone anyway, so I hit allow. This is a brand new phone, as my last one went kaput just the other day, so there was pretty much nothing on it anyway, save for a few screenshots of cute animals that I couldn't decide which one should be my background and lock screen. I also screenshotted some toys and other entertainment items I was looking into buying. Some for me, some for Christmas gifts later on. But as far as contacts went, I didn't have any need to enter any. I didn't really have many friends, and all the phone numbers I needed regularly I had memorized by heart, and those were my place of work and a few relatives. I didn't really care if SimWorld knew my location either. All I ever do is work and come home, and occasionally get gas and groceries. Once I hit allow, the app started, and I immediately realized the game was not at all what I was expecting it to be, nor did it have any affiliation with the Sims games. At first it seemed just like a camera. I was looking at my yard through my phone, and for a brief moment, I thought it was just another camera app. But a few seconds went by, and flowers began to bloom on the screen, but not in my actual yard. Wow, that's really pretty, I thought. There was so much color. This wasn't the app I was hoping for, but nevertheless it piqued my curiosity. I held my phone in my hand and scanned the rest of the yard, until the tree in the middle of it was in the center of my screen. There were no animals outside, but the app showed a cute little white squirrel with comically large eyes running around it before going up. When it disappeared into the branches, it began to shake and cherry blossoms began to fall on the screen. It was simply beautiful. I couldn't even begin to fathom the technology behind this app. It was fairly quick to register what was on the screen and alter it visually by making it into a more beautiful version of what really existed. It felt like I was in some sort of fairy tale world. I got up from my porch and began walking around. I approached the street, which was a river on my screen. I lived in a small neighborhood and there wasn't much traffic, so I stepped out into the middle of the street and set my phone on the ground. Just as I had hoped, the app revealed life forms on the screen. Most of it was fish, but deep down in the waters, where I couldn't reach because it wasn't actually water in the real world, there was a mermaid. I wanted to interact with the mermaid somehow. Maybe it was part of the game. I attempted to zoom in, and sure enough, it brought me deeper underwater. I kept magnifying the screen with my thumb and index finger until I was at the bottom of the river. The mermaid greeted me and waved for me to follow her. With an intrigued grin on my face, I did just that, and she led me to a treasure chest that was at the corner of my street. I touched it and it opened. A message appeared on my screen saying, "You collected 1 ruby, 2 diamonds, 1 sapphire. Touch item for more info." Jewels were a form of currency, I quickly learned. Rubies were used to purchase new skills, but I couldn't see what the skills were that I could purchase. Diamonds purchased new content, and sapphires unlocked new themes. This was so much better than a Sims game. I wondered what other types of jewels there were. I figured there were probably emeralds, maybe amethysts. I didn't know if there was any point to the game still, like a plot or anything. But at the very least, it was amusing. I zoomed back out to return to land and went back inside to eat dinner. I found myself playing SimWorld way more frequently than I had anticipated. One time, I literally just got on a bus to explore my surroundings through SimWorld. The entire world was the same, but augmented. That's what the app was. It was an augmented reality game. But I so desperately wanted it to be real. It was so beautiful. I had collected dozens of jewels and made quite a few in-game purchases. I purchased some new themes: sci-fi, utopian, and dystopian, several holiday themes, as well as cartoon and anime themes. I unlocked a skill that allowed me to zoom out on the screen and essentially make myself fly over the world. Additional content included enemy encounters that would have me interact with the environment to defeat them. I figured out pretty quickly, if you put your hand in front of the camera in a finger gun position, it automatically becomes a gun, and you can shoot your enemies. Really impressive, I thought. And then there were some theme-specific add-ons like robots, elves, pumpkin patches, that sort of thing. I switched up the theme rather frequently, so I don't remember which one I was using when the game did something that would forever scar me. I was exploring my own home when a virtual swarm of large flies led me into the downstairs bathroom. It looked completely normal on the screen. Directly in front of the door was the sink, and right next to the sink on the other side was the toilet. In the back right corner of the room, the bathtub. It was a jacuzzi-style tub with mirrors along both sides of it. I noticed facial recognition trying to capture my face in the mirror, but I must have been moving too much because it gave up rather quickly. After about a minute of scanning my bathroom, I began to feel uneasy. I didn't know why. Maybe it was because nothing else was there. No added visuals, no sounds, nothing. I scanned the entire bathroom from my left side to my right, and there was nothing interesting. That is, until I scanned it back, from right to left. What I saw horrified me, and I was so startled that I dropped my phone. What I saw was, in my bathtub, what looked like a corpse. Sitting in the edge of the tub, stiff as a board with black skin. And when I say black, I don't mean racially. It almost looked like she, at least I thought it was a she, due to the long black hair that remained on the head. It was burnt in a fire. Like how bacon or hot dogs turn black when left on the grill too long. That kind of black. She was unhealthily thin and was slouched down in the corner of the tub with an arm extended like she was asking for help. I ran out of the room, not even bothering to pick up my phone. I was terrified of what I saw. I had nightmares about it. It wasn't until the next day that I reclaimed my phone. I told myself I couldn't have possibly caught that much detail in a split second. It probably wasn't even a corpse or humanoid figure of any sort. It had to have been my mind playing tricks on me. I cracked open the door and made sure nothing was in there before I went in. My phone had landed screen down when I dropped it, and I refused to look at the screen until I was out of the bathroom. The app had logged me out due to inactivity, and honestly, I was kind of relieved. But still, curiosity got the best of me, and later that day, I opened it. It wasn't on any theme at all. I prepared myself to enter the downstairs bathroom again. I hadn't used it since the night before. I only used the one upstairs. To my relief, I saw nothing. But I tried this multiple times, spiking my anxiety with each attempt, trying to recreate what had happened. I was relieved when nothing happened, but my curiosity wanted so badly to return to it. It wasn't until a week later, and it was midnight when I saw it again. By this time, I had calmed down quite a bit, though it still made me feel extremely uneasy. The woman's face seemed burnt beyond recognition. Or maybe that was just because the app didn't want any similarities to actual people. Or maybe because the creators were lazy and didn't feel like developing a face. It wasn't really important. I held down the power button and volume down button, but a message appeared on my phone which read, "Cannot take screenshot at this time." Well, shit. I examined the body, figuring it must be some kind of new detective level in the game. It was so nerve-wracking, examining a corpse that wasn't even there. My heart kept racing the entire time, as if something would actually appear in front of me. This corpse was so much more detailed than the other add-ons. The eyes were completely white, no pupils or anything. I could see the dirt under her nails, the wrinkles on her forehead, but couldn't make out any other features. The screen was just blurry on those parts. I felt like this was some sort of puzzle I had to solve. The more I examined it, the less it bothered me. This was just a puzzle, I kept telling myself. But I wasn't sure how to solve it, or what I was even looking for. I examined the nude corpse, finding nothing new for days. I was obsessed with this puzzle. The moment I came home from work, I'd go straight into the bathroom. I initially thought the puzzle was on a timer, because she only appeared at nighttime. After the first time she appeared, and I found her again, it was around midnight. The next day, it was 11 o'clock at night. The day after, 10 o'clock. The hours seemed to keep getting bumped up by one each day. This particular night, it was 7 o'clock when she appeared. It was definitely on a timer. I knew I had 7 days to solve the puzzle. That much was obvious. I didn't know what else I was looking for. I examined every part of her that was visible. I thought I had exhausted all clues when I realized part of her back was visible in the mirror. I looked as closely as I could and noticed one tiny detail that actually wasn't so tiny, but it was easy to miss because of the discoloration in her skin. She had what looked like a bite of some kind, right where her neck met her back. It was round and very clearly some kind of toxic bite that had been turned black with the rest of her skin. Okay, I had a clue. I could work with this. I grabbed my laptop and immediately began looking up different types of bug bites, but none of them quite matched the description of what I saw. I pored over my laptop for hours, coming up empty-handed after each search. I didn't know if I wasn't looking hard enough, or if I was looking into something too much. But whatever the case, the bite mark wasn't helping me solve this puzzle. The next day, It was 6:00 p.m. when I went to examine the corpse in my bathtub. I was loaded up on energy drinks because I didn't sleep that much the night before. So to make up for my lack of sleep, my brain was now wired and overactive. I was able to focus so much more, and it only took about half an hour before I realized something that chilled me to the bone. The way her arm was extended wasn't positioned in a way that indicated she was asking for help. It was easy to miss because of the slight curvature of her fingers, but she was trying to point at something on the wall to the side of the toilet. I admit I was afraid to look. I knew nothing would happen unless I looked through my phone, so naturally I glanced over my shoulder first. Nothing out of the ordinary, just the shelves where I kept my towels, cleaning supplies, and toiletries. I took a deep breath. I could feel my heart trying to escape my body as I turned my phone to face the shelves. To both my disappointment and relief, nothing was there on the screen either. I was furious. I thought for sure I had figured out the puzzle. The more I got into this idea that the SimWorld corpse was pointing at something, the more I felt stupid for not realizing it sooner. It seemed so obvious after I concluded that. It was so typical of a horror game. You see a statue pointing, you look in that direction, right? I was so angry in that moment that I decided I was done with the game. So I closed out of the game and opened up the app settings on my phone. I found SimWorld and opened the settings for it. It would not allow me to uninstall. The only other option was force stop. So I didn't hesitate to press that option. I was greeted with a pop-up message that said, if I force stop the app, other apps may not work properly. My initial response was to just delete it anyway, since there wasn't much on my phone. But then I looked at the other apps and realized the ones I had were crucial. My alarms, my messaging app, calculator, calendar, Chrome, email, Uber. And then I didn't even know that there were whole apps for files and gallery and just really basic shit that I hadn't even considered. You know, the bare minimum necessary apps that any normal phone requires to function, plus a few that most people can't do without. So instead, I simply told myself I'd leave it alone. It's just a phone app. It can't hurt me. But the anxiety I got every time I used it was becoming all-consuming. I knew I couldn't go on like this anymore. It was all I could think about from the time I woke up in the morning till the time I went to bed at night. When I went to work the next day, I left my phone in the car to prevent me from being tempted to open the app. It was highly addictive. It's just a stupid game, I kept telling myself. But then, it got weirder. It got so much weirder. My boss walked over to me and told me to go to her office. I thought I was in trouble. After all, I knew my work performance had been slipping. I was so wrapped up in this game, I wasn't surprised. I thought carefully of what to say to avoid as much trouble as possible. But then she simply told me that there was an emergency phone call for me. Emergency phone call? For me? I immediately picked up my pace, worried that something might have happened to a relative. And I was so frustrated with SimWorld that I had left my phone in my car so they couldn't get a hold of me. Not even knowing who was on the other line, I immediately greeted them. Hey, what's going on? It was my landlord. He called to tell me that a pipe had burst in the house I was renting, and the downstairs bathroom was flooded. He found out when a neighbor noticed the water spilling out onto the driveway. My neighbor knew my landlord from when he lived there and alerted him right away. That's how he found out. My boss gave me the okay to go home and salvage what I could. Luckily, none of my possessions were damaged except for a few rolls of toilet paper that were sitting on the floor, but nothing of value was damaged. My landlord said he was going to the store straight away to get supplies to tear out the floorboards and replace the carpet. He told me to clear out what I could to make the job easier and faster, and someone should be by soon to fix up the pipe. In the meantime, he had a hose connected to where it was coming out from, the bathtub. And luckily, it stretched all the way to the storm drain at the end of my yard, so the flooding wouldn't get any worse at least. I was alone in the house, alone with my thoughts, just me and that damn bathtub. I was convinced there was a spirit angry with me or something for not finishing the game. There was no way this was just a game. I was convinced it was real. I didn't know what I was looking for anymore. I felt so lost. And I didn't know why. I didn't know why it had to be me. Why it was my house. Why it was my bathroom. But this wasn't a coincidence, and I knew that. It was 5 o'clock. I knew the SimWorld corpse would appear in my bathroom again, and I had to verify, just for my own sanity. I promised myself I wouldn't look at anything too in-depth, mostly because I didn't want to alarm my landlord. I saw the corpse and left it alone until after he left. It was late into the night by the time my landlord had ripped up a majority of the floorboards. He had quite a few fans running to dry up the ones he couldn't immediately get to. There were sections of the floor that were completely missing. I couldn't walk on them, but I was still able to make my way into and out of the bathroom. He said to leave the fans running and to keep the pump going, and that he'd be back the day after tomorrow. He also gave me a key to his lake house, in case the noise from the pump prevented me from sleeping. I called my boss to explain the entirety of the situation, and she gave me the next day off as well to tend to the house and get some rest. There were 5 days left to solve the puzzle. I was running out of time. I didn't know much about the puzzle, but I knew this much. I didn't know what else to look for. I had this silly idea to remove the shelving unit and look behind it. After all, the corpse was pointing in that direction, and I didn't see anything through the app. Sure enough, there was a hole in the wall, about as big as my fist. I wondered if someone had punched a hole and used the shelving unit to cover it up. It was one of the few things that were in this house when I moved in, so it was definitely possible. But if that was the case, I only ended up with more questions. Who was this girl? Was she real? How did she know about the hole in the wall? How did this game seem to know things a normal app wouldn't have any way of knowing? Who designed and published this game? Who else knew about it? Did anybody else have any experiences that were similar to mine? Was there a connection between the placement of the corpse and the burst pipes? How did she die? Did she drown, or was she burned, or something else? Why was she in the bathtub? Particularly if her cause of death wasn't drowning. I frantically began typing in as many keywords as I could think of into Google on my laptop. I typed in my address, mysterious deaths in my town, and in my state, burnt corpse in bathtub, strange insect bite, SimWorld, haunted phone apps, haunted games. I even entered my landlord's name, thinking maybe he might have done something sinister here. I couldn't find anything. I looked at the app information in my phone to see who the maker was. As if I wasn't already hitting a wall, the maker was in a text that I could not read. I couldn't copy and paste it either. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something move in the mirror. A tiny little black spot seemed to move upward from the floor, toward the center of the wall, where the hole was. Must have been a bug of some sort. Great. On top of having 5 days left to solve the puzzle, and a burst pipe in my bathroom, now I had to worry about a bug infestation as well. I wondered if the moisture from the burst pipe was attracting them. I made a mental note to let my landlord know next time he came around. I caught another glimpse of something small moving up across the wall and into the hole. It seemed every time I looked away, I'd catch it out of my peripheral vision, but when I watched and waited, it wouldn't happen. Either these things knew I was watching them, or I was going crazy. So I turned around to face the mirror and decided to watch that way, thinking maybe they wouldn't notice that I could see them even with my back turned to them. Terrible mistake. I quickly felt a sharp pain on the back of my neck, followed by the creeping sensation of an insect traveling down my back, underneath my shirt. I shrieked, and without putting a single thought into it, I yanked my shirt up and over my head, leaving it on the bathroom floor and running out. I shuddered in disgust. I never liked bugs. I didn't mind them, as long as they kept their distance and didn't touch me. Not only did this little shit touch me, but it completely violated me, getting underneath my clothes and crawling around all my body. I wasn't going to get over that for quite some time. I'd never get my shirt back. I wouldn't dare to touch it, knowing the bug might still be inside it. I'm not sure what I felt on the back of my neck, though. I couldn't tell if it had bitten me, or scratched me, or if the element of surprise had just tricked my brain into thinking it was a painful sensation. Regardless, I watched as it ran out from my shirt on the bathroom floor and into the hole in the wall. It was so fast I almost didn't see it. If I had blinked, I would have missed it. I stayed at my landlord's lake house that night, not because of the noise the pump made, but I didn't want bugs crawling into my ears or nose while I was asleep at night. I returned the next morning feeling quite homesick. It wasn't that the lake house wasn't nice. It was great. But my belongings, my clothes, and my food were all home. I never liked being away from home for long, regardless of where home was. My homesickness was much stronger than usual, though. I actually felt sick. Maybe it was just the anxiety from being in an unfamiliar place, but I felt like I needed to check my temperature as soon as I got home. And I would have if I was able to find my thermometer. I felt warm, though, and my head felt weird. Like if I went back to bed, I'd have one of those crazy, nonsensical dreams that you get when you have a fever. I didn't know if I had a fever or not, but I was just grateful that my boss allowed me to have a day off to rest after dealing with that emergency yesterday. I knew the corpse would appear at 4 o'clock today, meaning I had 4 days left to solve the puzzle. I went into the bathroom to look for clues, both in the real world and in SimWorld. I noticed something really odd when I entered. The hole in the wall was gone. I called my landlord to ask him if he had stopped by yet, thinking maybe he repaired it already. When I called, he said he hadn't been there and was coming back tomorrow to finish up the work. Weird. It didn't even look like the hole in the wall was repaired. It looked like it was never even there to begin with. I lightly knocked on the wall in several spots to get a feel for how hollow it was, or if the hole would suddenly appear again. I found nothing right away. Maybe I'd have to wait until 4 o'clock. I decided to go back to sleep, thinking maybe I had just hallucinated the whole bug thing. I must have slept the entire day away, because I woke up to a knock on my door from the landlord, and also a very hungry stomach. I was annoyed at this point, but it was the weekend, so it didn't matter. I was, however, very annoyed with the fact that I had lost an entire day to solve the puzzle. I was down to 2 days now, and it was getting difficult now that I felt like I had a fever. It was hard to focus, even after filling my stomach with food. I made some rather bland toast to sate my hunger and immediately began obsessing over the bathroom again. Of course, I had to wait until my landlord was gone because he was still doing repairs in the bathroom. The last thing I needed was for him to start thinking I'd lost my mind. I sat in a chair next to the bathroom door with my laptop, where I continued my research, occasionally glancing over to see what my landlord was doing, and also wondering if anything unusual would show up through the SimWorld app. I didn't notice anything too unusual, but the moisture must have started to build up quickly, because I noticed my landlord covering his face with a t-shirt, wearing only a tank top underneath. I didn't smell anything. Surely if he was using dangerous chemicals, he would have warned me. Perhaps the fever was getting to me. I didn't taste much of my toast after all. Maybe all my senses were deteriorating. The only thing it seemed I could sense was heat and skin sensations. I was really, really hot, and a tad bit itchy, mostly around my face, scalp, and neck. I tried to not make any discomfort obvious, but I ended up scratching the back of my neck until I drew blood. It finally stopped itching, at least for the time being. But I knew I had to cover it or else I'd end up with blood all over my favorite chair. I ended up passing out again while my landlord was in the bathroom. He was gone when I woke up. I had lost yet another day to solve the puzzle. When the time was right, I entered the bathroom. I examined the wall again, both with and without the app. I didn't see anything except a plain old boring wall. I examined the body again. It was just as still and black as ever, still pointing at the imaginary hole in the wall. I thought maybe I'd need to look at the corpse first and then the wall. Maybe that's how the puzzle was done. Maybe I was supposed to see her pointing at something, and then look in that direction. So I looked at the wall through the app again, but didn't see anything. I moved my phone back in the direction of the bathtub. She was gone. No, she wasn't just gone. I didn't see her moving, but I caught a glimpse of something black on the right edge of the screen, as if I had maybe just caught the very last moment of her in motion, on her way out of the tub. I followed the direction, although she was no longer visible, and kept panning right until the wall with the hole was in the shot. I only stopped moving because my phone lit up in a way I had never seen before. The camera flip icon in the upper right corner of the screen began pulsating. I was really freaked out now. It wanted me to look at myself. I thought it was too personal. I don't know why I hadn't thought to do this before, but I certainly didn't want to do it now. I felt my heart race. This was the adrenaline rush I had been looking for, except that I was so tired from whatever had come over me that I just didn't care to go on. Instead of flipping the icon to view myself, I slowly looked over my shoulder. I didn't see anything, but when I returned my vision to the wall, the hole was there again, both in SimWorld as well as the real world. Intrigue overcame me. I stopped viewing from my phone and approached the hole in the wall. I noticed a bug come out of it. I didn't know what kind of bug it was. Some kind of spider. Then another. And then a larger one. Maybe just slightly smaller than the top of a soda can. Crept out and immediately jumped on my face. I cried out in horror as I stumbled and fell back, landing in the corner of the bathtub where the virtual corpse had been. I couldn't see the spider anymore, but I could feel it crawling on me against random parts of my body, but I had fallen in such a way that wasn't so easy to get up. I squirmed, only making the pain from the fall worse. I felt like I was covered in bruises. My elbow nearly pierced through the side of the bathtub. My body bent in ways that it shouldn't, and I'm pretty sure I banged my head multiple times on the faucet. It was just a fall, but I felt like I was dying. Probably because of the fever. I wasn't doing so well. I felt like falling asleep there. Even after multiple spider bites, I could see the marks they left behind. Tiny little red bumps that began to turn black after a minute or so. I had been bitten by quite a few of them, I realized. I was starting to itch all over, but was finding it difficult to move. I didn't know what kind of spiders they were. I didn't care either. But whatever was in their venom was paralyzing me, causing me to be unable to move. My senses dulled even further. Everything looked dark and lacking in color, but I could still see somewhat. I heard a voice. It wasn't my landlord. It was a woman. I didn't recognize the voice, but judging by her words, she must have heard me screaming from the spider attack. "Hello? Is someone in here?" I heard her calling to me. I tried to respond, but I couldn't talk. I tried making any amount of noise that I could, tapping on the sides of the bathtub, trying to pound my fists on it. I was able to, but it strained my muscles so much that I could only do one pounding at a time. I attempted a bit more frantically as her voice neared, and I heard her footsteps approaching the bathroom. I didn't know who she was. She must have been one of my neighbors that I'd never spoken to. Her mysterious identity remained as she entered the bathroom. I had never seen her in my life. She didn't seem to notice me. Maybe she thought I was dead. I tried so hard to warn her about the spiders. With every ounce of energy left in me, I struggled to point to the hole in the wall. The woman scanned the room and noticed my phone, which was still lit up from SimWorld. She had quite the puzzled look on her face as she looked at the real world through the app. She panned around the room just as I had done, completely ignoring me. Then the phone was aimed directly at me. I had managed to lift up my hand, just enough to warn her about the spider hole. But now I couldn't move my hand back. Not only this, but I couldn't fully extend my fingers either. I couldn't move anything. I couldn't even blink. I couldn't breathe. She looked at me through the phone, and then I slowly saw her turn around to face the wall. No, I tried to warn her. But no matter how hard I tried, my lips wouldn't form to the shape of the words. I couldn't exhale, and my vocal cords refused to make any sound. As I looked back at my phone, I realized the camera flip icon was still pulsating. The woman must have noticed it because she did the same thing I did. She slowly turned around, and when she did, I was horrified by her face. Her skin went completely black. No longer the pale skin of the woman who entered my home. She had no lips. I could see almost every tooth in her mouth. They were yellowed and rotten looking. Her cheekbones were all there were to her face. There was no fat on them. Her facial structure was like that of an anorexic supermodel. She looked straight at me but didn't see me. She looked back at the wall as she held up my phone and pressed the camera flip icon. Her face was not shown. It wasn't aimed at her. The phone was aimed behind her, at me. The only thing I could see in the frame was the black corpse in my bathtub.